Welcome back to On the Record. We're here at the Robin Robbins boot camp, and I'm here with a speaker who just came off a little while ago, and in between I had to wait in line to talk to him because it seemed like the whole place was lined up to buy your book. And sorry, I've got it in my hand. We'll make sure everybody sees it. How to soar like an eagle in a world full of turkeys. And you've also written another book. What's it called?
It's called 52 Essential Habits for Success. There's so many self-help books out there, and I wanted to do something that was a little bit easier than someone trying to figure out how to analyze themselves, assess themselves, or whatever. And so I just came up with 52 simple ways to figure out how you can be better at what you do, all written on one single page in a 20 font that's kind of big, so you can kind of look at it and go, that's the habit to make myself better at what I do.
So you're a motivational speaker now, and I know you didn't come from that. I mean, I don't think you woke up when you were, 6 months old and said, gee, I'm going to become a motivational speaker. How does that come about?
Well, I started my first company when I was 24 and owned several companies. And then when I sold my last company 20 years ago, it was kind of too early to retire. And I wanted to do something. And a friend of mine asked me to do a little training. When you own companies, you're in sales. I don't care who you are, what your position is in the company. If you're the CEO of the company or you're the vice president of sales, everybody's selling. And so I went in and did a little training and thought, I really like this. I went to the National Speakers Association's annual conference and walked around and said, I think I can do this. And I'd heard a lot of great speakers in my time, from the Zig Ziglars and the Dennis Whateleys, and I just wanted to kind of share and talk about it from a motivational side, but also from a business perspective. A lot of people are what I call business entertainers. They get up there and they have a real good message, but they don't know the other side of making a payroll and dealing with employees and the real side of the business. So I tried to meld the two together, and it worked. I've been doing it for 20 years.
Wow. Yeah, I've done a fair bit of this, and I enjoy doing it, but I never made a career out of it. What if, from your point of view, if you're going out there and you're talking to, well, in our case, 160,000 resellers out there, what would be it, remembering that this is not, you don't have 2 hours to do this, I'm giving you 2 minutes instead, what would you tell them to do?
Well, it's interesting. One gentleman walked up and he said people were on on camera watching in Atlanta on remote, and he just got a text from one of his people saying, if you want to change anything, change yourself first. And when you look at businesses, what you're trying to do, and I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is they think their people understand why they're doing this. To a lot of people, it's just a job. But if you can convince them that we're doing this all together, and we're out there fighting the competition together, and then you create a culture that people want to be involved in, then it becomes more of a family situation. And that culture is what a company is all about. And so what I try and do is when you look on the motivational side is to one, I talk from my heart because I've been there, to get to their mind, but to get everybody involved, to understand why we're doing this, how we're doing this, and where we're going to go. And then you get excited about it. A lot of people sit there and when they watch me talk, I talk real fast, and one reason why is I'm excited about what I'm saying. But when you look at a business, one thing I try and help companies understand is don't sell. Worst thing you can ever do to a customer is sell. You help them get what they need. And when you change that attitude and you start helping clients, then they'll keep coming back to you. And they'll bring you more clients. It's like I said in the program, the 8-16 rule. You do a good job, they'll tell 8. You do a bad job, they'll warn 16. Well, if you quit selling and start helping organizations, they're going to get a lot better, and you're going to get a lot better. And the most critical thing, as far as the entrepreneurs I was talking to here, is the people that you're hiring. You got to hire right.
Yeah, it comes back to an expression I used to use all the time with my staff was, you have to do 20 things right to correct one thing you do wrong in a person's mind.
Yeah.
Isn't that it? I was trying to think of the right numbers.
Yeah.
And, it's just amazing. People don't understand that. It could be the smallest little things to you.
Right.
But if they're really significant to the customers, then that, it's their take.
Well, today I was talking about the wow factor. I said, if you want to find out what's going to make your company successful, go ask the customer. What is the wow factor? What are you looking for? In fact, what we used to do with my companies, and one thing I suggested to them is I said, every 6 months we would go to our customer and ask this question: in a perfect world, if we could provide you perfect service, what are we not providing you? Because a lot of times a customer won't complain. They'll just pick up the phone and call somebody else because you didn't deliver. And so what we try and do is say, what are you looking for? What else can we do to be better? How can we help you? And if you ask that, sincerely ask that, and then take the, and try and do something to, to counter what the customer just said, then you'll be more successful. But so many companies don't do that. They don't ask what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, and then I think the second part of what you said is so important. I'm going to repeat it, and that is, it's not just enough to go out there and ask them, but then you have to be willing to make those changes, or to figure out if you can make those changes. And if you can't, you have to go back there and tell the people, here's why we can't do that part, but here's what we can do.
Oh, that's perfect, and that's perfectly said. Because if you ask them and you don't deliver on any of it, they're like, well, this is a total waste of my time. So now you come back and you sit there and say, one more negative. It's like I've always told salespeople: if you get an objection and you don't answer the objection, then they're not listening to anything else you're saying. So you better be able to meet that objection. So if the customer says, well, I would really like you to do this, if you can't, then you might be able to find somebody who can. I've always said, deliver on what you can. The book Good to Great says, figure out what you do right and what you do wrong, what you can do best, and then do it.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, I guess it was back in 1997 when we first started to put together our online vehicles, and nobody else was doing it at that time. Mm-hmm. And the programmer that we had, who was working for us, he says to me, I'm sorry, it can't be done. And he was only with us for a week. And everybody in the room, there was about 15 of us in the room, yeah. And everybody just shut up and stared at me. And because nobody says that to me, and they know why. Right. And I turned to him, and I said to him, so what you're really telling me is that if I can find somebody else who can do it, I should fire you and hire them. And he looks at me and he says to me, well, you didn't let me finish my sentence. And as quick as that, and he stayed with me for a long time because I loved it, because his answer was, he says, I can't do it today, but if you give me till Monday, I will tell you what the plan is.
Oh, okay.
And that goes back to your part about what's the plan?
Yeah, what's the plan? Let me figure out what do you need? Let me figure out if I can do it.
And for the whole time he worked for me, he never once ever came back and said it can't be done.
Right.
Now he would say, is Monday fine, or is Thursday fine, or whatever it is.
Right.
But yeah, you have to be in there and trying to do it and do things right. And
well, I remember one time I had somebody that said his boss was killing him. Just giving him more things and more things and more things and more things to do. And he said, but I didn't want to stop my boss and say, I can't do this, I can't do that, and can't do this. I wanted to be there for him. He says, how in the world can I tell my boss, what am I supposed to do next? And I said, show him the list. He said, what do you mean? I said, here's the list, sir, of what you've asked me to do. You've asked me to now do this. Where do you want this in priority? In other words, let him make the decision. But I have no problem with doing what you want me to do, but here's the list. This is what we're working on right now.
Okay, I think you just made me into a turkey, because going from yours to the way you said it, I did that with one of my employees who's our senior VP.
Right.
And one day she came in there and she says to me, I have no problem doing what you asked me to do, but here's the list. And she showed me a list.
Right.
And she says to me, so just tell me which ones of these I can have below that line so I can put this one in today. And I've never thought of myself as a turkey, but listening to you today and from what your book is saying, you just proved to me I'm a turkey.
Well, we all are. I always ask people, I said, if you don't think you're a turkey, raise your hand. Let me see who that, because we've all made those mistakes, and that's the way you grow. And sometimes, I've got a 20-year-old son, and who can line me up in a hurry. He'll sit there and he'll tell me something and not do it mean, or he'll just say, Dad, did you know you did this? And you kind of go, wow. And when you trust your people and you have a relationship, and I love my son, I know he's not coming at me from a negative position. So when you create an environment where your people can say, look, boss, that ain't going to happen, or we can't do this, or I have this list. In fact, I've suggested to many managers, I said, when's the last time you had a meeting and somebody disagreed with you? I said, because if you're having meetings and nobody's disagreeing with you, you don't need to have a meeting. It's a total waste of your time.
So what happens if I have meetings and everybody disagrees with me all the time?
Excellent point on that. Okay, when I do strategic planning sessions, the first thing I have the company do is identify what they do. What is it you do? Then I break it down. I say, where are we excelling? Okay, where are we average, and then where are we failing. All right, and then you have them identify where they're failing, and then you put it back on them by saying, all right, how do we fix this? And have them tell you. I've learned a long time ago that if you get your people to buy in to the change, in other words, they're the ones that are recommending, well, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this, and they are the ones that come up with the change, then they accept the change a lot better. So I sit down and have them come up with and start identifying it, all the way down to things that I might be doing wrong. It doesn't really matter. But you've got to identify, write it down, and then come up with a plan. And then I tell them we got to cull it down to 3. I mean, we got to do 25 things, but you're not going to get 25 things done. You got to. Great companies focus. Walmart has a contest every year on what are the stupidest things we do around here. Their attitude is subtraction is genius. Addition is for fools. Anybody can keep adding to policies. But how do you subtract and make it simple? Keep it simple, stupid. And it's one I've used for years.
Sounds great. Before we wrap up, and we do have to wrap up, unfortunately, because I'd like to keep this one going for a few days.
Okay.
But at the end of when you spoke today, you talked about a husband and wife and their argument.
Right.
You have to tell me that one to get on tape.
Husband and wife get into a fight. The husband looks at the wife and says, I don't know why God made you so beautiful and so stupid, all in the same package. And she said, well, darling, that's quite simple. God made me beautiful, so you'd fall in love with me. He made me stupid, so I'd fall in love with you.
Robert, it's been a pleasure.